Hello students, welcome to EPG Parshala. I am Dr. Savita from Maharaja Agrasen University, Baddi, Himachal Pradesh. Today we are going to talk on module Theory of Production under the paper Managerial Economics. After completing this module, you will be able to understand the meaning of production process and factor of production, fixed and variable inputs, average product, marginal product and total product, law of variable proportion, applicability of law of variable proportion in all fields and conditions of its postponement. Production is one of the vital processes of an economy. Production can be defined as the creation of different goods and services. Production means transforming input, that is labor, machines, raw materials, etc. into the output. The process of production doesn't necessarily involve physical conversion of raw material into tangible goods. It also means the creation of services like those of lawyers, musicians engaged in the productive activity. Having ascertained the level of demand in the market, the firm begins the process of production. In this chapter, we shall study about the production process, factors of production, production function, and law of production in the short run and long run. Production process may assume different forms. As explained here, if a manufacturing unit buys raw material to create semi-finished product, it is production process. If a factory buys semi-finished product to buy finished product, it is also production activity relating to material goods. Transportation of a commodity from one place to another is the production of service. A fisherman just transport fish to the marketplace, it is also production. Storing a commodity for future sale or consumption is also production. Even wholesaling, retailing and packing are also examples of productive activities. In broader sense, production can be defined as the creation of utility of material goods and services. The primary inputs are land, labor, capital and enterprise, also known as factor of production. The intermediate inputs are those inputs which have already been produced by some other producers. Different amounts and combinations of inputs will lead to different levels output. If output is to be produced efficiently, then input should be combined in the optimum proportion. This combination is known as technique of production. Production function. A production function expresses a functional relationship between quantities of inputs and outputs, or the production function gives the functional relationship between physical input and physical outputs of a producing unit. It specifies the maximum physical quantity of a commodity that can be produced per unit of time with given quantities of inputs and technology. Algebraically, production function can be written as output is equal to function of LNKE, where Q stands for output, F for functional relationship, L for land, N for labor, K for capital, and E for entrepreneur. Two important points must be noted in this regard. Production function must be considered with the reference to a particular period of time, and the second one is the production function of a producing unit is determined by the state of technology. With advancement of technology, the production function changes in a way that there is a large flow of output from either the given inputs or smaller quantities of inputs. Fixed and variable inputs. It is important to classify inputs into fixed inputs and variable inputs. A fixed input is defined as one whose quantity cannot readily be changed. For changing output, buildings, machinery and management are some of the examples of inputs which remain all the more fixed over short period. A variable input, on the other hand, is defined as the one whose quantity may be changed or varied for making desired changes in output. Having understood the meaning of variable and fixed factors, we move on to the production process, that is, the output resulting out of the employment of these factors. In the short run, few factors remain fixed while the total output increases with the increasing doses of variable factor, thus altering the ratio between the quantity of fixed and variable factors employed. As the production increases in the short run, the proportion between fixed and variable factors of production varies, and the law of variable proportion sets in. According to the law of variable proportion, as the quantities of a variable input are increased by an equal amount, keeping the quantities of other inputs constant, total output increases, but after a point, it increases at a diminishing rate. This law can also be put differently. When more and more units of the variable factors are used, holding the quantities of fixed factors constant, marginal product increases. Gradually, a point is reached beyond which the marginal product starts declining. After some time, the average product will decline, and finally, the total product will diminish. Before going into the mathematical calculations and diagrammatical expositions of the law, let's explain the concept of total product, average product, and marginal product. Related concepts: TP, AP, and MP. Total fiscal product. Production in the short run is subject to law of diminishing returns. Let's now see how the law of diminishing returns affects the total cost or total fiscal product, TPP. Let's take an example of a farmer cultivating 10 hectares of land and employing varying number of workers. In this simple case of farm, there are only two factors, namely a fixed supply of land, that is L, and the variable supply of farm, that is N, and the production function would be TPP is equal to total fiscal product or TP. TPP is equal to function of L N, where N is equal to labor and L is equal to land. This states that total physical product, that is the output of the farm over a given period of time, is function of, that is depends upon the quantity of land and labor employed. Average physical product. It is the total product that a consumer produces in a given time period divided by the quantity of the variable factor that is used to produce it. Symbolically, average production is equal to total production divided by variable factor units. Average physical product refer to the output per unit of the variable factor. In the case of farm, it is output per worker. Symbolically, average physical product can be expressed as APP is equal to TPP divided by N, where N means the number of workers employed on farm and TPP total physical product on farm resulting from the employment of a specified number of workers on the farm. The shapes of the total, average and marginal curves. The shapes of the APP or APN and MPP or MPN curves are determined by the corresponding TPP or TPN curve. The average product or APN corresponding to any point on the TPN curve is calculated by the slope of the straight line from the origin to that point on the TPN curve. The APN curve usually rises at first, reaches its maximum and then fall, but it remains positive as long as the TP is positive. The marginal product or MPN between 2 points on the total product or TPN curve is equal to the slope of the TPN curve between 2 points. The marginal product or MPN curve also rises at first, reaches its maximum before the APN reaches its maximum and then declines. The marginal product or MPN becomes zero when the total product or TPN begins to decline. Using the concept of TP, AP and MP discussed in this section, we can explain the input-output relationship in the production function. As per the availability of time with the firm, there are two cases. One is law of variable proportion, that is operative in short period, and the second one is law of returns to scale, that is operative in long period. In case of former, the quantities of some factors are fixed while that of others are varied and is popularly known as law of variable proportion, as the proportion of fixed and variable factor changes. In case of later, all the factors are variable and hence the scale of operation is doubled or tripled, hence is called returns to scale. In this section, we concentrate on the law of variable proportion. Statement of law of proportion. As equal increments of one input are added, keeping other inputs constant, the resulting increments of product will increase for some time. After reaching its maximum value, it begins to decrease or marginal product increases up to a point, then will eventually diminishes. Assumptions to the law. The important to consider following assumptions of the law of variable proportion. The variable factor is applied unit by unit and each unit is identical in amount and quality. All the factors apart from this variable factor remains unchanged in quantity and quality. The technique of production remain unchanged. The technological progress is assumed to be constant. The law specially operates in the short run. The units of variable factor must be divisible into smaller units. The law takes into account only the physical relationship between factor inputs and outputs. The monetary value of output is not considered at all. Law of variable proposition occupies an important place in economic theory. This law examines the production function with one variable factor, keeping the quantities of others fixed. Actually, it refers to the input-output relation when the output is increased by varying the quantity of one input. Explanation of law. Suppose we have a farm measuring 1 hectare of land using agricultural equipment and inputs like seeds, fertilizers, labor, etc. We want to grow wheat. Keeping all other factors constant, we increase the number of laborers on the farm to increase the output. Consequently, the total output, that is TP, average product and marginal product will change, and consequently the TP, AP and MP curves will depict specific behavior. Stages of production. It is observed that there is specified set of proportion in which factors must be combined to attain highest return out of the given amount of various factors. The relationship between the average product or APN and the marginal product or MPN can be used to define 3 stages of production for labor. Stage 1 goes from the origin to the point where the APN is maximum. Stage 2 goes from the point where the APN is maximum to the point where the MPN is 0, that is point L. Stage 3 covers the range over which MPN is negative, that is beyond point L. Now, it is clear that the behavior of output changes when the varying quantity of one factor is combined with the fixed quantity of other. It can be divided into 3 distinct stages. Stage 1 increasing returns. In this stage, TP increases at an increasing rate. In terms of marginal product, means that MP rises from point F onward. The TP increases at a diminishing rate, that is MP falls but it remains positive. The point F is called point of inflection, corresponding to which MP is maximum. The stage 1 ends where AP reaches its maximum, that is point S. Stage 1 is known as the stage of increasing returns because AP of the variable factor increase during this stage, while MP first increases, reaches its maximum and then falls but remains greater than AP. Reasons: in the beginning, the quantity of fixed factor is abundant relative to the quantity of variable factor. More and more units of variable factor are added, the fixed factor gets more intensively and effectively utilized and production increases at a rapid rate. Stage 2, diminishing return. In stage 2, the TP continues to increase but at diminishing rate until it reaches its maximum point H, where the corresponding MP is 0. This stage is known as stage of diminishing returns, wherein both the AP and MP continuously fall. Reasons: once the particular combination is reached at which variable factor is sufficient to ensure full utilization of fixed factor, then once further increase in variable factor will just cause MP and AP to fall. This is because fixed factor would become inadequate relative to the quantity of variable factor. Since the factors are imperfect substitutes for another, the stage of diminishing return. Stage 3, negative returns. In stage 3, TP declines, that is after reaching its maximum at the end of second stage, and the TP curve slopes downward. As a result, MP of variable factor becomes negative. This stage is called the stage of negative returns. Reason behind is the large number of variable factor impairs the efficiency of the fixed factors. The excessive variable factor as compared to relatively less amount of fixed factor results in a fall of total output. In such a situation, a reduction in the units of the variable factor will increase the total output. Causes of law of variable proportion. The reasons behind application of law of variable proportion are discussed in 3 categories. Causes of increasing marginal returns to a variable factor. Initially, the amount of fixed factor, in our case being land, is abundant relative to the amount of the variable factor. Here, labor employed with the increase in the employment of units of variable factor, the fixed factor is more intensively and effectively utilized. Consequently, the production increases at increasing rate. Here, the marginal product keeps on increasing till it reaches its maximum. As the fixed factor was largely underutilized, with the increasing doses of variable input, the utilization of fixed factor increases at diminishing rate. Thus, indivisibility of fixed factor, that is impossible of breaking down fixed factor as per the requirement of variable input employed, is the major reason behind the application of increasing returns and diminishing returns to a variable factor. The corresponding issue is the quantity of variable factor employed. With the employment of sufficient amount of labor or variable factor, it becomes possible to introduce specialization or division of labor, hence leading to greater level of productivity and efficiency. As we have discussed earlier, that after a point, the diminishing marginal returns occur to the variable factor. Let's discuss the forces working behind this tendency. First of all, fixed factor scale to variable factor. Once the highest point is reached at which the amount of variable factor is sufficient to ensure the efficient utilization of the fixed factor, beyond this point, any increase in variable factor will cause the marginal and average products, that is APN and MPN, to decline, because the fixed factor then becomes inadequate relative to the quantity of variable factor. In simple words, the fixed factor falls insufficient to the quantity of variable factor employed. Indivisibility of fixed factors. As the fixed factor is indivisible, it cannot be broken into the quantity best suited to the units of variable input employed. Therefore, initially, when the indivisible factor is not being fully used, the successive increases in the variable factor add more and more to output, since fuller and more efficient use of the invisible fixed factor is made. Gradually, the variable factor is employed in such an amount that the fixed individual factor is being used in the best or optimum proportion with the variable factor. Beyond such a combination, any increase in the amount of variable factor would lead to decline in managerial returns to the variable factors due to insufficiency of fixed factor to the requirement of variable factors employed. Imperfect substitutability of factor. Initially, fixed factor is in abundance while the variable factors is in shortage. As more and more units of labor are employed, the fixed factor is used more and more efficiently. Hence, the application of law of increasing returns sets in here. The fixed factor can't be substituted for the variable factor. Toward the full utilization of fixed factor, the optimum proportion between fixed and variable factor is achieved. After reaching the point of optimum combination of labor and capital, any further increase in the employment of labor means relatively large quantity of labor, that is in proportion to capital. In simple words, we go on increasing the quantity of labor initially we reach a stage where this ratio reaches its optimum value, that is best ratio between labor and land. Beyond this point, the capacity of fixed factor or land will be overutilized, since the labor cannot be substituted for land. The law of diminishing returns set in. Causes of negative marginal return to a variable factor. Gradually, we reach a stage when the amount of variable factor employed becomes too excessive relative to the fixed factor that they get in each other's way, with the result the total output falls instead of rising. Too large number of the variable factor adversely affects the efficiency of the fixed factor, just as the marginal product of fixed factor was negative in the first stage of production due to its abundance. In the third stage, the marginal product of the variable factor is negative due to its relatively larger quantity. Postponement of the law. The law of diminishing return can be postponed in following cases: improvement in technique of production. This law can be postponed if the technique of production is improved along with increase in variable factor. Perfect substitute. The law can also be postponed if the factors of production are made perfect substitutes, that is, when one factor can be substituted for the other. Application of law of diminishing returns. The law of diminishing returns applies to agriculture because land is fixed. However, the law has universal application and operates in all fields of productive activity where one or more fixed factors are combined with one or more variable factors. Thus, is in industrial enterprise, capital is kept fixed and other factors are increased. The MP will definitely increase but will ultimately diminish. Thus, the law also operates in industries like mining, fisheries, and in building industries. So students, let's now summarize what we have learned in this module. In this module, we have discussed production function, factors of production, their behavior in short run, and law of variable proportion. As the production increases in the short run, the proportion between fixed and variable factors of production varies, and the law of variable proportion sets in. Law of variable proportion refers to the behavior of output which changes with the change in the units of variable inputs. Thus, the law states that as the quantity of a variable input is increased by equal units, keeping the quantity of other inputs as constant, the total product initially increases at a higher rate, then at a constant rate, and ultimately at the diminishing rate. Thank you.